All right, welcome to the program. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. My new time is Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I expect to be live at that time. There might be a few times when I'm not, in which case you'll get a rerun. But for the most part, my goal is going to be to develop an online experience where people can interact. You can call us. The number, by the way, is there at 508 637 5596. I'll be okay. 508 637 5596. Or you could text us and we will read your text. I'm also live on TikTok. They've given me back my show. And you can text me there as well. And the goal is to have like a live experience where we can have a few jokes. We can talk about some issues. We can delve into some topics. And we can do so regularly in an experience that I'd like to reproduce from the days when I actually was on the air in a good old-fashioned radio station. And I developed this sort of situation where I had regular callers, and it became an incredible experience. Anyway, Mike, things are going amazingly well in this country right now, thank God.
Oh
And
yeah, I mean, I have to give a call out to my old buddy Kevin Collins that wrote a book, I think maybe 20 years ago, essentially calling the Democratic Party a criminal organization.
mm,
And I called him the other day and said, I don't think even you knew the extent.
how bad it was.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're now getting the scandal around the seizure of the USAID,
Oh man.
which is by any stretch a huge scandal. About 10% of their budget, and they go back to an executive order that was issued by John F. Kennedy, by the
Yeah.
way. And by the way, Schumer is dead wrong when he says it was Congress. It was not. It was an
No, it was an
executive order.
executive order by JFK, and he's got to be spinning in his grave to see how this has
Oh yeah,
been
it's
so
horrible.
distorted.
Originally, it was supposed to deal with humanitarian crisis around the world. It was modeled after an Israeli group that had done this since the founding of Israel,
Hmm.
where they would go into Africa and help develop infrastructure, deal with crisis. And it started that way, but like a lot of other things, it became corrupt to the point where now, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15% of its budget goes into those things. It's like it's a criminal organization. And by the way, Secretary Rubio has said in response to all these lies being pushed by the mainstream media that those aspects of USAID are not going to be interrupted. That's going to continue under the direct auspices of the State Department, but that the rest of the USAID is funding horrible things, including, according to major media reports, the Wuhan lab in China where they created COVID.
Oh yeah.
Uh, media figure organizations like Politico.
Politico got $8 million over what, a couple of years, I think, three
Yeah,
years.
now they've apparently stopped their payroll. Like they can't afford it,
Yeah.
and a whole long list of media figures taking payoffs from USAID, probably around the world and here. They were involved in nation change, government.
Regime change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where they basically were the main drive behind stopping Bolsonaro in Brazil from getting reelected, probably trying to screw Netanyahu in Israel, probably trying to screw anyone that they don't like. And it's a kind of meddling that this country really is not supposed to be doing. It's not. I mean, it's not in our interests. It's not like we're supporting good people. It's the communists and radical Islamists. Apparently, money was pouring into Gaza
Yeah.
and Yemen and Afghanistan, even recently, certainly under Biden. Stuff that is not only not in the interest of the American people, but is promoting world war, is
Does
promoting.
anyone have an idea, Chuck, of when it started going rogue? I mean, ultimately, I guess it doesn't matter, but I'm just curious.
Well, I'll tell you one reference I saw when I interviewed an author, and I'm trying to remember his name. I'm looking into it. He wrote a book that was published by Regnery about world population control.
Yeah.
And USAID was one of the major funders of forced abortions in China and also forced sterilizations in India, starting in the 1960s, and other agendas that, really, I mean, apparently there was an experiment where hundreds of thousands of Peruvian women were sterilized without their knowledge. I mean, we're talking about ghoulish, evil
So what
experiments.
you're saying is it was almost from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. This was in the 60s. And
Yeah.
Lyndon Johnson praised them at that time as being on the cutting edge of creating, a reduction in the world population.
Well,
And
he was corrupt as hell.
yeah, and
And
Indira Gandhi in India was all behind it, probably got a ton of money. A lot of politicians, a lot of the money was funneled in, a lot of the money that was sent to Ukraine was funneled through USAID. And now the Ukrainians are saying, he says that they are missing $100 billion. I mean, really? I mean, this is a huge, a lot of that money ended up going back into the pockets of corrupt politicians, corrupt organizations around the world, and including in the Democratic Party. Now, this is it's a scandal that's so vast that it's almost impossible to get your hands around. But we could talk about one simple element to it, and that is the funding of political figures of a political organization called Politico, and also apparently funding anti-Trump activities like the all of the lawfare cases. I wonder how much money, if any, was funneled into the pockets of Alvin Bragg or Jack Smith or Big Fanny or what's her name up in New York?
Letitia James.
Yeah, Tish James. I mean, how many bucks did they get out of this? This is like a real rotten. And if anybody on the left has any defense of it, I mean, I would imagine they probably would have been, if somebody had been funneling money to Fox News, not that they're so great, but, it would have been we would have never heard the end of it. It would have been a huge national story. But now they're trying to tamp this down. This is the scandal that really could put a nail into them. And the fact that they're trying to run interference with the work of DOGE, which of course is headed up by Elon Musk, which uncovered this and which asked for Rubio to abolish that organization, and he did.
Yeah.
The other element is that they have gotten the Treasury Department records from the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, it has been put on hold by a federal judge that indicate that people were getting money funneled through USAID to do all kinds of garbage around the world. I mean, this is people who are high-level Americans. So we are getting close to really uncovering what President Trump has accurately called the deep state. This is what they are. I mean, the USAID seems to be inextricably intertwined with the CIA and with black ops. And the reason that Rubio said, and I saw him interviewed on this, that he had to seize their organization and shut it down was because they would not turn over records about their budget and where their money was going and how much they had.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, at least insubordinate for any alleged American organization. But they're not even American. I mean, it's a worldwide thing. It's a corrupt group of rogue operators all around the world. They've got something like at least 10,000 employees, all of whom are now out on their ass. They've all been cut off. They were funneling money into Afghanistan. I mean, it's really a huge scandal, and we only know the tip of the iceberg.
Well, you would think that if someone really believed in the Democratic Party, they'd be all in exposing this kind of corruption, but instead they're doubling down.
They're having these stupid protests over this. Can you imagine? This is their big cause now, protesting the shutting down of USAID. And they're going to go on the street here in Boston at the State House. There not too many people showed up, but it's this is what they're fighting for now.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous because even if you say that 10% of the activities agency is worthwhile, okay, fine, that's
Right.
retained. But the notion that this is some sort of big slush fund for every corrupt person on earth, uh, this would make Bernie Madoff blush, the extent
Oh,
of this thing.
but of course they are. We know that they are standing by it because they are supporting leftist causes, leftist politicians and parties who are trying to overthrow governments. They spent $10,000 trying to have a what was it, like a gay pride parade in Belgrade.
Yeah.
First of all, they didn't have it, but which brings up the question in my mind: who got that 10 million bucks?
Well, see, right, Chuck. That's what I was going to mention. It's one thing to get the line items, but then who's at the other end?
Right, somebody
Okay.
is getting awfully rich
Yeah.
from this, and it's there's a lot of money sloshing around, and greasing a lot of palms, if it's to use the old mafia expression here in Boston. This is like it's and the stuff that they were funding is it's really not in anyone's interest. And now if you want to go support that, fine, go ahead. I mean, that's a private matter. But to expect taxpayer money to go into these things, I mean, this creates discord around these countries who don't want this stuff, going back to the population control agenda, which finally, I remember this book. I'm going to try to find this again. It was great. I remember my co-host Patrick O'Heffernan had a complete meltdown when we had him on. But the Philippines, they finally kicked them out,
Yeah.
and forced abortions, sterilizations. I mean, this is like really, really dark stuff. So that's what I know about their past. Who knows what else? I mean, this is something that we may never get to the bottom of it. But the good news is that they've been at least mostly stopped. This is a miraculous. It would never have happened had Trump not been elected. You
Wouldn't
know,
it have been, I mean, a better position for people like Chucky Schumer and others to come out and say, we're all in favor of Elon auditing and getting to the bottom of this because they just don't realize how bad this looks, I guess.
they're actually like fighting to say to preserve the lack of to keep everyone
Let's
afraid.
repeat what I said 2 weeks ago. Apparently, everybody is Ethel Rosenberg. Okay.
They're crazy. Yeah, they're absolutely they're Kool-Aid drinking, devout, radical, illuminated puppets. They're just it's a way of thinking. I mean, anybody who saw this meeting, I don't know if you caught any of the moments of the Democratic National Convention trying to elect new leadership. Did you see that?
I saw just little snippets.
Their main comment when they opened up the discussion and everybody applauded was the reason that Kamala Harris lost the election was because of racism and misogyny.
Right.
I mean, they haven't learned anything. Just locked into this.
No, they haven't learned anything because I've seen this happen in athletics, and we've talked about this so many times, this Model UN thing. Imagine if you're in the eighth or ninth grade and everybody around you tells you how smart you are, right? And you have this Model UN view of the world. And you live in your little ivory tower with your same friends and go to your same miserable university. And now, when you get out into the real world, if you have enough resources, it's possible to insulate yourself from most of it. I mean, I know people
Yep.
my age and older that are like that.
Me
They're,
too.
oh yeah. I mean, I went to a fairly wealthy part of LA high school,
Mhm.
and there are people there that were hardcore liberals, still are, have the same philosophy. They don't care what's happening in the real world because they don't live in the real world. They're either professors, they have jobs with NGOs, so that's how it gets perpetuated. And if you're Chucky Schumer, someone with, I mean, I don't know how the hell he ever got elected. He's a bozo, but I guess once in, he stays in. He is just a true believer. This guy's
Well,
worth $80
it's
million.
worse than that. I mean, you're right. I mean, there are these hardcore true believers who are, like, as you say, model UN types, and they haven't really had an original thought in their entire life, and they
Right.
just drank the Kool-Aid early on, and they're in it. And then you have people like Chuck Schumer, who I think is a conscious, witting participant in an international conspiracy. He knows the score.
Well,
He's
he's
part of
getting
it.
money from somebody.
Oh
Here's a
yeah.
guy that has a salary of what, 200 grand a year, but yet he's worth $80 million. How does that happen?
How does it happen? I mean, Elizabeth Warren is another one. You know, she got a lot of money from Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders, Big Pharma. You know, all these people, they are witting, conscious participants in an agenda that seeks to subsume the entire planet into a world order where the nations of the world become nothing more than provinces that, you know, create like a massive system, probably powered by artificial intelligence eventually, where all aspects of your life will be controlled, where everything you see, everything you know is going to be micromanaged by people that by non-people, by a artificial brain. They have this agenda. Transhumanism is the expression of it. They've kind of gone a little underground on that, but they used to be very open about that over at MIT, where I live, where they actually had a transhumanist website. It's gone now.
Yeah.
That, you know, had a department which they talked about these things. This new kind of a man that is basically half human, half cyborg. And this is their agenda. This is their belief. They don't believe in a creator of the universe. They believe in themselves as this elite group of operators. The good news is that there are people who were drinking the Kool-Aid on Trump who are now thinking. I know a few in my own
Well,
circle.
it's interesting you say that because if you go on X or TikTok or certain YouTube channels,
Yeah.
you are seeing a lot of primarily black men, some women,
Yep.
black men who are pissed off.
Yeah.
You know, they've been carrying the water for this party for X number of years. And now, you know, as we say, to throw in a little biblical reference here, the scales have fallen from their eyes.
Yes, I've seen it. But I even say that there are some people that maybe a few scales are starting to fall. People in my own circle, including people that are very close to me, who are just were devout Trump haters, who are now like, I don't know. I mean, this actually is interesting. You know, they are starting to think.
Well,
They're,
what is their reaction specifically to the USAID?
well, I mean, in the case of people close to me, they weren't too happy to find out that they'd been funding Hamas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, they've been funding Afghanistan. They've been funding Iran, Yemen. I mean, radical, you know, jihadists around the world. I mean, they're funding, you know, any group like that. I mean, they're creating like a conflict. You know, they're funding. I mean, but of course, people in our circle aren't too happy with finding out that they funded the lawfare agenda against Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And I am particularly, you know, you and I have talked often about Operation Mockingbird, which was part of the revelations of the Church Committee in the late 70s when they did hearings on the CIA, and that it was basically an operation where the CIA was handling satchels of cash to various media figures to run certain stories and to create certain stories out of scratch in some cases. And it was admitted during the hearings, the Church Committee. And yet it was never really gotten rid of, according to many of us who feel that it continued. Well, now we know that it continued because USAID was doing Operation Mockingbird. I'd like to see the names of all of the reporters who got checks from that. They say there are hundreds of them. Media outlets, reporters, individual reporters, journalists, columnists. Let's get it all out. You see, they're trying to get judges to stop the release of this information. But we need to know exactly who was doing this because they have tried to corrupt. This is what they do in fascist countries. And, the media is like basically controlled by and a stooge of the ruling junta. This is what they were doing. They were just stooges of this state, of this apparatus. They were running stories, fake or otherwise. They were taking money to promote stories, mainly that were attacking Trump, of course, and demonizing the MAGA movement. The J6 narrative is completely phony. By the way, I'm having 3 of those people come on my show next week.
Oh, wow, good.
Obviously,
I think it's the old story, they don't know when to quit, okay? Joe Biden would have been a happy camper if he had not run for president, right? He could have left as a corrupt guy his whole life as a VP and gone back to Bethany Beach or Rehoboth or wherever the hell he hangs out, and that's fine.
Right.
But instead he comes in, is going to be completely discredited president. No one is going to support this guy.
Do you know there's rumors that he pardoned himself an hour or 2 before leaving office?
I had heard that. Is that credible?
Yes. Well, he pardoned his brother and his brother's sister-in-law and his sister and her husband.
Yeah.
He issued these crazy pardons. We know about Fauci and Milley, all within a few hours of leaving office. This is, I think that there are a couple of federal judges now who have stood up and read the Constitution and realized that you can't pardon someone for something that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
They have not been formally charged. Now, maybe he could get away with the Hunter Biden pardon because he was convicted.
Well, he was charged.
Exactly. But
Milley wasn't, Fauci wasn't.
They were not charged with anything. And even the Hunter Biden thing, you can pardon him for the crimes that he committed, but you can't say, well, anything that might come up.
Yeah, you have lifetime immunity, lifetime free pass.
Yeah, it doesn't really, there's no precedent for that in terms of the use of the pardon, except with the one single exception, and that is, of course, the Nixon pardon, the Ford pardon of Nixon, which was an unusual and exceptional situation. But other than that, it's never been done like that. No one's ever been given pardons for something they may be possibly charged with in the future.
Of course, the proof of the pudding, my friend, is that these guys accepted it. All right. Where's the Fauci that I've always known who defends to the hilt every miserable thing he's done in his rotten life? He has an answer for. So now you give him a pardon. He's silent. The real old Tony Fauci would have said, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need a pardon. Okay.
Well, it's by any standards, and I think legally even, and I think it's been stated as such under law, that the acceptance of a pardon is an admission of guilt.
Yes.
It's just like, in a way, pleading the fifth is an admission of guilt. You're saying, I'm guilty, which is why I can't talk about this, because I'll be incriminated. And
I think what's going to happen with this stuff is there's going to be these lame efforts to get left-wing federal judges to try to suppress these movements for a while. But first of all, what's going to happen is stuff is going to get leaked anyway. You can bet on that.
Right.
And the public, there's not going to be very much support for this criminal activity. There's going to be the Jasmine Crockett's and these low IQ types. They're going to try to frame this as a fascist takeover of the government and so on. But that is mighty thin gruel now.
No one's buying it. No. It's not flying. And you're right. They got some leftist federal judges who might, we just had something here in Massachusetts where a federal judge has put a stay on President Trump's buyout program for federal employees. It might slow it down a little. There's going to be another hearing.
Well, wait a minute. What's wrong with that? Bill Clinton did it.
Of course, it's completely appropriate. And he didn't even say why he did it. There was no law cited. So it's just one like it's kind of a desperate grasp at like kind of judicial activism. It's not going to stand. I think that by Monday there's a hearing, and he is absolutely in his right to offer the buyout.
I think
And
about 50,000 employees have already
yeah,
taken the deal.
oh yeah,
So,
and that stands. But there's another federal judge. I mean, they're trying to jimmy up the system a little bit, but look, the Supreme Court is not going to stand for it. Other than that nutcase, Coney Barrett maybe is a loose cannon, but putting that aside, I don't think that it's going to stand.
I got to tell you something about her to interrupt. She was being praised to the hill, these adopted kids, and she's so religious about. I never bought it. Never bought it. This goody two shoes. I'm sorry. All right.
Yep.
And what happens? She ends up being a complete disappointment.
It's true. I mean, maybe Trump he put her in there just as like within a week or two of leaving office or the election, I think. And that was something he had to move quickly on, I guess.
Well, he was given some crummy information. Okay. She's a woman. She's allegedly conservative.
Yeah.
She's Catholic, so she says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But
yeah,
it's very difficult to get perfect information on that, but it's also important because there's a hell of a lot of damage that these people can do.
That's right.
And the idea of putting someone on there because she's a woman really drastically failed with Sandra Day O'Connor.
Right.
Although
she would be conservative by today's standards.
She was conservative by today's standards, but
we also got rid of affirmative action. Let's give credit where it's due. So, but the point is that, yeah, I mean, even with her, they still have a majority in the Supreme Court, and I think she's going to at least be half right.
Yeah, I mean, she's not going to be in favor of corruption. I'm just saying that she's taking some stands that were disappointing.
True. But anyways, I think that all of these sort of last-ditch attempts to gum up the works are not going to fly. Now we have Pam Bondi has been confirmed, and she's kicking ass. I mean, she immediately is investigating all of these lawfare cases. She's calling for cutting funds to sanctuary cities because they're violating the law. I mean, this is great. I mean, they're going in. I think that we can hold our breath and hope that RFK is confirmed. I think he probably will be, but if he is, that's huge. I mean, that's a revolution.
It's going to be a nail biter. And in fact, I got into it on the ACSH website with some woman who has a lot of knowledge and she picked this so-called HIV/AIDS denialism as something that he supports, and this was a disqualifier. But one of the things I countered her with was, okay, maybe I'll give you that. There were people at the beginning that didn't think that HIV caused AIDS. There's people that still don't think that it does. But how about COVID vaccine denialism? You think that's a bigger deal?
Right.
So I think it's going to be a nail biter for RFK. He's probably going to get it. And did you see how aggressively they went after him in those hearings? All these pharma stooges. It was unbelievable. Do you promise not to fire anybody in HHS? Well, we got 3 million employees.
And they also put all of them through the struggle session about whether or not they thought the 2020 election had been stolen. And, I thought in a free country, we can question elections, but they all responded quite well in terms of saying, what I recognize is that Joe Biden was sworn in as president. That's all they would say, which is technically, of course, true. But they did not comment on their opinions on the election. Now that she's in there, she's commenting. And I think once they're all in, they can then be free to take a look at it, because everyone knows damn well what happened. I'm not going to say it because I'm still on YouTube now, and we're still censored on that topic, even though I
Well,
say,
here's the point too. Why does that? Well, okay, philosophically it matters, but why, in a practical sense, does it matter in this sort of hearing whether he
it's not
legitimately won
relevant.
the election? His term is up. He's gone.
Exactly. It's over. I sent Google a note asking them to restore my account and YouTube, because I said, look, I was taken down because I had some people on the program who claimed that the election was stolen, but he's gone now. It's over.
Yeah.
It's not relevant at this point, and no one's going to threaten Obama's regime. There was, I get the fact that they
Like
were
how you
afraid.
said Obama's. Okay.
Obama's regime, Biden's regime. I mean that there was comments about people wanting to decertify electors. Yeah, they did. They wanted to stop that. Okay, fine, but it's over now. He's out. Doesn't matter. Now we could go back to status quo ante and talk about whatever the hell we want on elections. It's no different than talking about whether or not James Buchanan's election was stolen. It's history. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
Well, wait. Why are you comparing him to James Buchanan?
No, I'm making the point that we could talk about Jefferson's election stolen. It doesn't matter. He's gone. It's like it's history now. It's not a threat to any regimes. It's not like a political issue anymore. It's now an issue for historians to kick around, which is free speech. It's at this point. If he's proven to have stolen the election, it doesn't matter now. He's out of power. I mean, I suppose it would obviously be greatly damaging and embarrassing to the entire liberal democratic establishment. Too bad. That's free speech. But whatever, tell them.
Well, what you're seeing now, in parallel to the political situation, is a total freaking meltdown of the entertainment industry. Okay? They are doubling down and tripling down, and they gave 13 Oscar nominations to this Emilia Perez movie, which basically is about
Transvestite or something that got did he get like the greatest woman actor? I think.
Yeah, well, the promotion of this, despite the fact that the movie did no box office, it very tellingly has an extremely low rating with the public on Rotten Tomatoes, but with, of course, the Access Media Critics is up there. But they're just doubling down. I mean, Disney is hemorrhaging money. The entertainment industry is collapsing, and it's like, I see an iceberg ahead. We're going to just go right into it.
Although I understand that I saw a few snippets of it, but the Oscars, they did not do the usual typical attacking Trump. Oh, we're going
that was, I think you're thinking of the Grammys.
The Grammys, yeah. We're going through such hard times now. We're going through such trauma. America's going through such a dark period.
Well, there were some DEI comments made at the Grammys, I believe.
Because I thought the main focus was on the LA fires.
That industry is collapsing. I mean, all the awards for Beyonce, please, best country album.
Yeah, right. But
I mean, I used to be a member of NARIS in the 90s, and it was already going bad. At that, but I mean, there was a great story that they figured that the show was getting popular, National Academy of Recording Arts Society. So the show was getting popular, so they decided they had to have a front man, rather than just kind of an office staff in Burbank. So they brought this unemployed musician out of Atlanta. I forget his name, frankly.
Okay.
It may come back to me. They give this guy, and this is in the 90s, $1 million salary. He starts sexually harassing all the women in the office. It was just
That's bad news.
pathetic. There were scandals with money, um, and it's just too bad how that goes. And I guess that was kind of a harbinger of what was going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different universe. There's no such thing as a record anymore. Everything is streaming
Right.
or an MP3. There are a jillion different genres of music. Billboard magazine is important only in that you can track the popularity of certain charts. But there's kids of the prime age that used to be this top 40 kind of stuff that don't listen to that anymore.
Right. And they've also, the big record companies have lost their relevancy because they used to be the gatekeepers. You didn't get a record deal and you didn't get heard unless you were picked by the big three. I think it was a big five.
Yeah.
People like Clive Davis, and
Yeah.
they decided everything. That's gone.
Yeah.
They no longer have that kind of control. And it's kind of similar to, the paring down of it is similar to what this, to get back to our original topic, what Doge is doing.
Yeah.
It's what Elon Musk did at Twitter. He basically fired 80% of the staff when he took over Twitter. He brought back a handful of them afterwards, but it's became stronger, better, more prosperous than ever.
It was the best example in history of the 80-20 principle, right?
Yes.
He fires 80% of the people, 20% of the people are doing the work. And remember when they told him, oh, no, it's going to fall apart. You need all those people. And he's thinking, no, I don't. This is all IT. It's all automation. What are these people doing? And if you remember that video that went viral a couple of years ago of those two women in a swimming pool talking about what their day was like, they worked for some tech company. And, they got free meals and they got all this time off. And as an afterthought, well, what is it you do here,
That's that about describes it. So anyways, he's now doing this with the federal government and they're freaking out, but it's about time. It makes me think of I consider him to be my mentor, the late great Jerry Williams here in Boston, who was talking about this back in the 80s, back in the 70s. He was talking about, like, for example, use the example of the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles. This massive department with their big offices and staffs, and you had to go in and have this miserable experience all day, waiting in line to get your license renewed. And just they were harassing people, and it was a boondoggle. And eventually it showed how corrupt it was, the people getting on payrolls, and Whitey Bulger's kids were on the friggin' payroll. There was like all this political hacks. And he pointed out, we could get rid of 80% of this, sell the buildings and have the state put the money in the coffers, lay off these people, and put the friggin' thing online.
Yeah.
Now they have done that, and it's worked out pretty well. You still have too much of it, but at least it's been pared down a little bit. That's what needs to be done on the federal level. We don't need to have this kind of stuff anymore. Lee Zeldin, he's been confirmed as head of the Environmental Protection Agency, I believe.
Right.
He just closed the Department of Environmental Social Justice, something like that. Laid off 200 people. They're going to sell the building. They're going to get rid of the whole freaking thing. That's how they're going to save money, because we don't need these things.
Right.
Somebody wants to talk about environmental social justice, let them do it on their own dime. Let them, set up a website and talk about it. But do we need to hire a whole agency with 200 people, probably earning who knows how much? It's, they're saying, oh, well, people don't appreciate the basic services. That's the big lie. The basic things that we want the government to do aren't going to change. This is 80% of the government I mean, I had an interview off the record with somebody who's a pretty high level government official in Washington. I can't say who because it was a private conversation, but he pointed out to me that none of them have gone back to work. The pandemic has been over now for 4 years. They basically, they've never been seen, and they're getting full salary. Nobody knows what they're doing. And the people who do go to work, they sit around all day looking at porn on their computers.
Yeah.
And that all the work is being done by these consultancies, these consultant agencies, which are getting a ton of money, and that it's become so bad.
Well, that's the other scandal, okay, which I'm sure Elon is going to get into. These contractors are hired to do the work, all right? Here's the problem. I knew a bunch of these guys when I was living in the DC area. The dirty little secret is the contractors were making way more money than the federal employees.
Right.
So not only was there this resentment, it's like, what the hell is this? You have staff that's supposed to do these things. You're bringing these outside guys, and it was a joke how much more these outfits really pay.
Oh yeah, and those things are. I mean, look, I get consultancy, but when it has this interaction with government, it's very corrupt. And we could look at the work of Kinsey and company here in Boston for that, and Deloitte. Yeah, they do some good work in the private sector, but their interaction. I mean, there's even recently here in Boston, there was a consultancy that's been brought in to look at the recreation and redesign of a highway in Brighton, which is a neighborhood of Boston.
Right.
And they had a public meeting, and one of the citizens asked a question of the consultant, and the consultant said, and I quote, I don't talk like this publicly, he said, "Shut the fuck up." And yeah, and this made the newspaper. But I mean, these are the consultants. They're not accountable to anyone, and they're running this thing. And they're not listening to anybody's complaints. So there are some legitimate issues around that. And in a sense, the elected authorities have turned over their responsibilities to these consultants.
Well, I mean, it's a vicious circle, because what happened in the case I was describing, this was the Department of Agriculture. And the thing in question was this big software involved with how to plan your diet and whatnot. And of course, agriculture had tried and failed to get this website to work. So they brought in these high-priced people and to fix it, which they did. But as the guy told me, this guy Paul told me, he said, but at the end of the day, no one's using the website anyway. Okay. Mm-hmm. It was a bad idea. But he'll take the money.
And they take a lot of money to do probably, in many cases, nothing. You get a big contract, and they're rolling in dough. But the point is that DOGE is going to really take a hard look, and they're freaking out because they're gonna pare down. This is what I can't believe this is happening. It's incredible. This should have happened decades ago. It's an incredible thing. Finally, they're going to bring the government into the present time. A lot of these activities can be replaced by websites and even by AI to a certain extent. I mean, I don't think that we want to see AI making decisions about real things that affect real people, but there's a lot of stuff that could be automated. I'll give an example. There's a lot of stuff that lawyers do where they charge a ton of money for things that could be done by AI, could be done through ChatGPT, could be done online. Standard things, like setting up a will or setting up, a contract of different types that are not complicated. Certain transactions in areas of like real estate or whatever. A lot of this could be done with automatically and at zero cost or low cost. And so they're holding on to it's like holding on to the horse and buggy. They want to hold on to their gig over there.
Well, that's the mentality. Do you remember some years ago when the bill pay function was introduced on bank websites.
Hmm.
You can now pay your bills online.
Right.
There was a big movement within the U.S. Postal Service. No, no, tell your friends it's better to write a check and put it in the mail.
Mm.
Uh, and you and I are old enough to remember what a pain in the butt that was.
Yeah,
You
and I remember waiting in long lines at the telebooth,
Yeah.
right? I think my daughter has never seen the inside of a bank. I mean, maybe when she set it up. Because everything is done. If you get a check in the mail, you just scan it and it goes into your account. Everything is done now using your smartphone. You don't need to have this whole big infrastructure. Now, look, people are going to lose their jobs. People lost their jobs when the horse and buggy, I mentioned that, when the car was invented, the horse and buggy industry, which was up in Amesbury, Massachusetts, along the Merrimack Valley, there was several big companies that did this. They lost their jobs, and it created a local depression. I get that. And they were lobbying the state to subsidize them anyways, and the state did not do it, but it can be dislocating. Look, I lost my company because of computers. My company, City Metro Enterprises,
I
I
remember them.
yeah, I was going gangbusters. I was
They
very.
didn't work for me, which you probably don't remember.
Did I do a job for you?
Yes, a couple of jobs.
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't think so because City
No,
Metro.
no, no. And here's what it is.
Yeah.
And this is for the world to see. When we had that limiter product for the dental industry, you guys distributed flyers on that product at the trade shows.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
That was my company.
City Metro, baby.
Yep. I was rolling high for many,
Yeah.
many years. I distributed flyers. I distributed posters.
Yeah.
I did like an ad agency could call me up, a record company could call me up and say, we need posters in 50 colleges around the country. And I could do it.
Yeah.
And there was about 5 or 6 of us who were in that business. We each did a little something different, and we competed with each other, but we also sometimes worked with each other on certain things.
Right.
All of us went out of business. All of us. Around the year 2008,
Yeah.
around that time, I remember I was down to one more ad agency, and they canceled it, not because they didn't like the service, but because they went automatic.
Yeah.
They all would decide, well, we're doing something different now. We're going to focus on advertising online where we could get it for free or we could get it cheap. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people, printing companies. I remember Copy Cop, was it Copy Cop in Boston? They had huge offices with printing machines. People were waiting in line at those companies to get their printing done. And they had all these expensive machines, a whole room of them. They all went out of business because people had printers with their computer. They didn't need them anymore. I'm just, it's like I'm saying that's, as my late father used to say, that's progress.
Yeah.
I did not understand the times. I did not adapt. And so I lost my company. And that's, it's no different, should be no different in the public sector. I'm sorry, but if you're not needed, you're out.
Well, then I have to ask you this. With all the waste, which is so obvious to the point that you can create a department to promote government efficiency.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, as a student of the human race, when all these cabinet secretaries came in, what did they think? They were just a big potentate and they'd go to lunch and look pretty? I mean, why didn't any of these people look into the operations of these vast bureaucracies? Because what, they didn't want to diminish their empire?
Yeah. I mean, it had become a perpetual, I'm sure there's a word in sociology for this, but it had become a perpetual entity, starting really with Wilson. It goes back in history, with these massive agencies just would perpetuate themselves, and they would exacerbate the problems they were supposed to solve because that helped them get more money and more budget. And it became like what Steve Bannon talks about, the administrative state. It's it's just that simple. It's
Well, I think the one example, I wish I had more details, was apparently the ex-president of Procter and Gamble was
yeah.
brought in to run some agency, and a complaint was made that Procter and Gamble, fine, they make a lot of money because they have a lot of name products that people like, but they're not exactly the most efficient operation in the world. And he was just a guy that presided over ginormous bureaucracy, and then went in to preside over whatever this agency was. Um, so I think that's what happens, that you have people that allegedly have, quote, business experience, but this becomes kind of a retirement job,
Mm.
and they're heading up the Department of Commerce, whatever it happens to be. And there's waste in all these things, but that's not their gig, you know. But
It's just
apparently it's Elon Musk gig.
and Musk is doing amazing things. I mean, already he has cut $10 billion from the federal budget,
Yeah,
and his goal is $1 trillion by the end of the year. At this rate, he's going to get there.
yeah, he is.
And the other thing is, of course, if you accompany that with a loosening of regulations on businesses and a lowering of taxes, then you can't tell what people may create. What businesses they may get into in the future. We don't know that because it's just like, I mean, the automobile replaced the horse and buggy, to use that example again, but it opened up a whole world of possibilities and ancillary businesses, and it created it created an economic boom in
Yeah,
the same way that in the 1990s there was an economic boom from the internet, from the laptop, and from cell phones.
yeah.
These things, they probably put some people out of business, but they opened up opportunities in other ways and in other modalities. I mean, I found other things to do when City Metro disappeared, and I've never really recovered from it, quite frankly, but that's the way it goes. I mean, I've done other things. I've done creative things.
Yeah.
We all go through a new phase in life. That's just how it is. I mean, you can't expect something to just chug along forever when it's no longer needed.
No, and I think that's the key right there. That people think that whatever the institution is going to last forever.
Exactly. And that's
It
what my mistake was. I thought what I was doing would last forever. I didn't really look at things collapsing around me at the time, even though I was warned by some people. I still didn't want to face it. That's part of
that's the other thing. I mean, the signs are often there.
right.
And where this happened, by the way, in the record industry, I think it was about the year 2000 or 2001, early 2000s. And a number, I believe it, it was a couple of different labels. And they decided to get what I guess today we would call influencers from various high schools around New York area,
Mm-hmm.
and serve them lunch and introduce them to some of the new artists. And, so they're getting the kids' opinions on stuff. But here was the kicker. So when this is all over, the guy running it said, okay, kids, when you leave this room, there are a bunch of conference tables out there with CDs of all these artists. Go ahead and take what you want, give them to your friends, promote this thing.
Yeah.
Virtually none of the kids picked up CDs
Mm-hmm.
because they don't use that format anymore.
It's right.
And one of my friends in the industry said that was the first sign that this model is done.
Well, you can't look at the guy that ran Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
He was offered, I think it was like $1.5 billion to sell that company.
Yeah.
And he refused because he said, hey, they want this company. Why should I give it to them if it's that great? And he ended up going bankrupt. It's just it had.
He was offered a deal by Reed Hastings to create what eventually did become Netflix, and he didn't want to do that either. I think the problem with that guy, the Blockbuster guy, was he was too greedy. There were interviews with that guy, I don't remember his name, where he was saying, look at this Blockbuster store. No one in here gets paid more than $6 an hour. And he was proud of that. Um, but that all fell apart. Uh,
Yeah, that was just a case of greed, it sounds like.
yeah,
But the point is that, to go back to the Doge story, I mean, I think it was actually FDR. This is Doge. He's doing no different than, in a way, FDR did, but not. Musk wants to do it on a bigger scale. When FDR entered office, he immediately ordered, by executive order, all agencies to cut their budgets by 10%.
10%, right?
Yeah. And he said at the time, he goes, look, the country is in a depression. Why should the government not reflect what's going on everywhere else? And they did. So, I mean, and he's of course a hero of the liberals, but that's what's happening now. You have to go in and clean house. I mean, I feel bad saying that for some people. Trump is offering a very generous buyout, 8 months of pay, plus you might have a retirement fund of some sort, or you can, have 8 months to look for doing something else.
Yeah.
And again, with the reduction in regulation, it opens up opportunities to get into business, to become more entrepreneurial. There are, who knows what might be invented coming down the pike. You have to learn, open your eyes and, think, people need to think outside the box. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you can ask yourself why no one did this before.
Mm.
And it took someone from the outside to do it.
It did. And every government probably from FDR, because ultimately he did increase the size of government anyways, but
a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, so from that time on, it's just continued to grow and it's continued to increase. And now you had, we've talked about Michael Glennon's theory about the double government. I mean, that was the establishment of the intelligence half of the government, what he calls the Trumanites.
Yeah.
Their power is being curtailed. You got Ratcliffe now offering buyouts to CIA agents. Apparently, something like, what is it, like 90% of them are taking it?
Yeah.
It's incredible. Good riddance to them.
Well, I think it's so high in the intelligence agency because they realize that there's been such abuses. And they, whether they're going to retire early or try to do something else, but they know the hammer's going to come down on this.
Right. I mean, they know that, like, President Trump has declassified the information around the assassination of JFK, which implicates the CIA, quite frankly, and other things like that. I mean, it's their power now is being curtailed. I mean, I worry about President Trump's safety when I say that, but it seems to me, thank God, so far they're being reined in. Whoever thought this could happen? It's incredible. This is really like.
Well, it could never have happened under the standard paradigm, where Bob Dole, it's his turn to run for president, It
would never have happened under
the outside, yeah.
I mean, and now Trump is coming back, having learned lessons from the first term, and he's getting rid of all of his enemies who have burrowed into the government.
Yeah.
Biden tried to put them there just like Obama did when he left, except Trump is finding them and routing them out. Those corrupt inspector generals and the FBI agents. I mean, people like, we remember Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and McCabe and Comey, the Vindman brothers. These are people who are all in the government, burrowed away, waiting to get Trump later. Trump's learned, and he's getting rid of them. He's finding them and firing them. And I just think that that's very heartening. They're not going to pull off another coup like they did last time with the fake dossier and the Mueller group and then the perfect phone call impeachment. It distracted Trump for 4 years with that crap. And they're not going to get away with it now. It's great. So.
Yeah, there's going to be a new revelation every day. And next week, we'll probably have some other big deal to talk about.
Yeah, like getting rid of the Department of Education. The late Sam Blumenfeld is dancing in heaven because he wrote about this for decades, how corrupt that was. Reagan promised to do it, and he didn't. Now it looks like it's being done. Trump has been very open.
Well, I'm not a member of the Reagan cult.
Neither am I.
And one of the reasons is that not only did he promise to do it, he could have done it.
Right. No, Reagan was not a lot of what people think. I mean, there are a lot of great things about him, but no, he was an insider.
Yeah.
But Trump is doing it, and again, the propaganda is going to be, oh, the children are going to be, bull crap. Maybe 10% of what they do might have some good aspects that will be folded into another agency. The 90% of stuff they do is push leftist propaganda, critical race theory, sex change operations on children, masks. Who knows what else? It's garbage. It's very bad.
It's a very exciting time, and it's just wonderful to see the change in your demeanor. I mean, before the election, you were so worried. Now,
oh my God,
you're the old positive Chuck.
Oh yeah, no, I'm feeling better every day, and I think that everyone is. Even people who hate Trump are. Everyone knows it.
Oh, even the liberals deep down are admitting that, gee, things are better.
It's incredible, and he's just an absolute dynamo. It's just an incredible thing to see. I look forward every day to opening the newspaper or looking online and finding out what's happened next, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
It's hard to keep track of it all.
Yeah. Now he's just signed an executive order getting rid of men and women's sports. Did you see that? That's fantastic, and they're cheering. Young women are finally not going to have their heads bashed in by some greasy guy in a wig.
Yeah.
I mean, it's these are important developments. He's doing it at all levels, politically, economically, culturally, all of it. He's taking it all on. I hope that RFK is confirmed because I think he's very key to cleaning up America's health. That's why they hate him and fear him. And Tulsi Gabbard.
What is so disturbing is the way his cousin has gone after him.
Oh my God, that's disgusting. Can you imagine saying that he was a predator? Yeah. Hello, what about Uncle Teddy?
Yeah.
You want to talk about predators? I don't think she was saying much about that.
No. And when it got even worse is that her son posted these videos.
Oh, he's weird.
RFK's neurological condition and so on, but it just isn't landing.
No. And he's weird. I mean, if you've seen his TikToks, he's like, the guy has a screw loose. I mean, in a way, it's sort of like that relative of Jackie Onassis in that movie they did with the, I forget what it was. He had like some weird relatives. He's a lot like that. But yeah, that's really disgraceful. And
I mean, why does she's got all the money she needs? Why doesn't she just keep her mouth shut? Does anybody really think that she is the chosen representative of the JFK flame?
I don't think it's gone over well. I don't even with liberals. I mean, she's a hardcore partisan. I think with her, it's an old Democrat Party thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's flowing. I don't think that's a good look.
No. No, but let him do it,
And also, Kash Patel was going to be friggin' amazing if he gets in. That's a tough one, too.
Well, they delayed it, I think.
They did. They delayed it, but it's going to happen, hopefully, God willing. He's an amazing, he's conducted himself incredibly. And that's going to finally clean up the FBI, bring it back to its original.
Well, that's the other thing we should mention for a second here. They had 5,000 out of 13,000 of their agents, 5,000 were working on J6, which roughly works out to 3 agents per J6 offender.
J6 and anti-Trump shit, doing the house and home invasion, messing around with Melania Trump's underwear drawer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really ugly. And I think that Pam Bondi has kind of backed away a little bit on that, in that she said that people who were doing like low level or following orders, they're not going to be dismissed. That's okay. I mean, I don't like it, but you have to have somebody in there. But the bigger people, the big fish, are gone. The people who actually were behind this, and they're people that are dangerous to Trump. They're going to try to find a new impeachment. They're going to try to sabotage him any way they can.
Well,
So,
Al Green already filed articles of impeachment for
yeah, his filings were like for dastardly behavior or something like that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of historian Alan Lichman on my program.
Oh,
He hung up on me. He got off the show. He wanted to file impeachment complaints against Trump for his war against women. Yeah, what? It's like it's not even good
the
logic.
trouble with that guy,
Oh,
and I wrote a piece about this, I'm going to start writing again now that we moved, is that if he had followed his own keys to presidential election, he would have picked Trump. If you
Right.
analyze the keys, he was so partisan in picking Harris that it was absurd.
Well, he's been completely discredited, and I think that he apparently in his last interview he went out screaming, and just a totally talk about Trump derangement. Him and that other historian from Tennessee, the Mitchum.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a good historian. He's written I think he wrote a great book about Thomas Jefferson, but so Trump deranged that he can't get it straight. The worst one was Michael Beschloss as a historian. I mean, he actually he called for Trump to be executed.
Yeah.
Because of,
you have to understand these are all academics. They're sitting in their little ivory tower. They have no idea of real life. Yeah,
True.
You write a biography of Thomas Jefferson. He died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're putting yourself in a different framework, and don't get me started on academics in general.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Completely. So anyway, next week at the
next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. The program is going to be live, possibly not on Friday, but there'll be a rerun on Friday. But I am reestablishing the live program, and I'm glad you can do that, Michael, and I look forward to it. What's happening on your side?
It's always a pleasure. I mean, it's especially now in my new studio here, right?
There you go. So you might as well
we'll get it fixed up. We still have plenty of boxes to unpack.
Yeah,
and maybe
on the next your own podcast, Mike.
We can talk a little bit about the brutal housing market, but that's
we could.
A good topic.
You might consider launching your own podcast, Mike.
How could I say this? Had I been able to sell the old business for a little more, I would have had somewhat more free time. But I have another company now, so we're doing okay, but don't have as much free time as I'd like. Fortunately, I'm still under 90 years old, so should be able to keep doing it.
What's happening on the Substack? Anything coming up or?
There's a bunch of notes.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to delve into this notion that this crap was all hiding in plain sight, if you think, because how in the world did the government go from whatever the size was under LBJ to this massive thing that nobody knows, what the right hand, the left hand's doing, and you're paying taxes like mad. How did it all happen? Is it incrementalism? And you suddenly wake up and you're a boiled frog, So
I think that's what it was. I think that's kind of it's basically did it by sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Anyways, Mike, thanks again, as always.
Yeah. Well, we will see you next time at the new time, and until then, just enjoy it.
Onward and up.